All right, let's do this. So this is deform. Hey, um, and mostly today I'm just going to go through the syllabus, which is going to be just like syllabi for all the other classes you've all taken with me. But there's a couple people who haven't taken classes with me before, so I'm going to go through it. And then we really won't get into like engineering material until uh, next class. But okay, so um, everything that I uh, everything that I give you, every assignment, every document you need is going to be on D2L. So you need to know how to get onto D2L. Um, I heard you guys talking about another Normandale class, so I think I can confirm that everybody here has taken Normandale classes before, so that should be no problem. But let me know if you need help making D2L work. Um, so this is deformable body mechanics, deform. And when you get into the deform D2L page, so there's the announcements. Whenever I make a change to something or put up an assignment or whatever, it's going to be in the announcements there. So I'd say just every day, look at the announcements, see if there's anything new. And then all the documents themselves are going to be in materials, content. Um, there are old lecture notes. There's also going to be a section on current lecture notes that I'll put up after class each day. And for the people, there's only a couple people here who haven't taken classes with me before, but the the reason that I'm doing the lecture on a tablet instead of on the whiteboard is when the class is over, I can make a PDF out of notes that I've done. So it'll look something like this. This is just some random day. And so you can print out the PDF. And I'm also, as I go, making a video where you can watch my pen write stuff and hear my voice. So it's just basically like being in the lecture. So if you miss class, it's nice for that. If you want to watch a class over again, it's nice for that. Um, if you want to, I think most people find they like taking notes. They get something out of that. But some people have said that they like just coming to the class and just watching the class and listening, not writing anything down, and then just print out the notes when I post them afterwards. And you don't have to worry about taking your own notes. So it gives you that flexibility if you want to try that too. Um, okay, so the notes that are up here right now are the notes from this class last spring. Uh, and I've taught this class enough times that the lectures have stabilized quite a bit. So this is going to be pretty close to what I do this semester. So if you ever want to read ahead or something, or if you ever want to just see a slightly differently worded version of the same lecture, you can go to last year's notes and check it out. And then the assignment problems and assignment solutions are up here. There aren't solutions to every problem. Maybe like half the problems or something have full solutions. And I might change. I'm always trying to fix problems with mistakes in my solutions or typos in my. So these might change slightly over the course of the semester, but this is basically the problems that'll be assigned, broken down into different topics. And then the course information. So there's the syllabus that we're going to spend most of the time on today. There's also a vector review in the first assignment in this and dynamics, and also in statics. So if there's anybody here taking statics and deform at the same time, you only have to do this in one of those two classes, but you're going to read this vector review, and I'm going to assign some problems out of that just to get you sort of two things. One, to get you back in the swing of using vectors, because this is going to be very, very vectory. And then the second one is just to get used to my notation because it's not the same that everyone uses. Um, and then TI 89 programs. Well, every year fewer people have a TI 89 because it's the Inspire has been around a long time now. I can help you try to um, translate these over to whatever kind of graphing calculator you have, but I just have a lot of programs, and I think I might not have mentioned this in Dynamics, but on Dynamics, there are a bunch of programs listed also, and having these on there will save you a lot of keystrokes. You know, it's not like you can't do it all just at the time without these programs, but it'll save you a lot of time as you go through problems. So we won't get to this stuff for a while, but there's just a lot of programs on here of useful stuff. So basically, well, I'll talk about that when we get to it in the syllabus. Okay. So now the syllabus. Okay. My name is Guy O'Lakin. There's all the contact information. This class is, so I like this semester because I like teaching statics, and dynamics is my favorite class I teach, and deform I also like teaching, and this is the one where I have a PhD in the area that all of this stuff comes out of. So this is sort of the natural step towards what I did my research in. And the department I was in at the U of Minnesota is it's part of the aerospace department. It's called Aerospace Engineering and Mechanics, and I was in the mechanics. And it was a very traditional mathy department, not a very applied engineering department, but just almost like a offshoot of like a math department. But some of my professors in that department were uh, just really major people in the development of modern like continuum mechanics and came up with some really important stuff, like very big names in this small area. So this is like my area. And I am going to, uh, so I don't require textbooks for any of my classes. Some of my classes, like thermodynamics and dynamics mostly, um, follow follow a textbook pretty closely. And if you got the textbook that I was doing my class from, you'd more or less be able to follow along with it, you know. This one and statics also are totally different. There's no textbook that I'm aware of that really teaches this stuff in the way that I do, but I think there are very good reasons for the way that I teach it. Um, Basically, I'm going to do all of this using a matrix math approach. Um, these introductory classes tend to be taught as a collection of scalar equations. And the reason that they tend to be taught that way instead of a matrix math approach is because matrix math is very tedious to do by hand. And so back when you had to do a lot of calculations by hand and you didn't have easy access to things that did matrix math for you, it just wasn't a very effective way to do it. Well, now everybody here has a calculator that does matrix math instantly. MATLAB does it instantly. And so instead of learning a scalar approach this semester and then you have to learn a new matrix approach when you take your next class, I'm going to just right from the start use the matrix approach, and I'll try to point out where there's sort of connections between the two that you should understand. But I talk to students after they transfer to the U or whatever, and I've never had anybody feel like anything was more difficult moving on because of the way I teach this. I think you'll be happy with it. I've had a lot of people say like, "Oh my gosh, when we got to the next class, like people were trying to learn this new thing and I'd already done half of it, you know." And so I think this is just a better way to go in a lot of ways. Okay, so my office hours are basically Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 2 to 3. And then it says on Wednesday it's 2 to 4 instead of 2 to 3. I'll change the syllabus and repost it, but I need to change that Wednesday to Monday. But it's basically like if you just think 2 to 3, Monday through Thursday, that's sort of the deal. Prerequisites are statics and Calc 2. Definitely certain people could take this class and do well in this class perfectly fine without taking statics, but we will use a lot of statics. And so you would have to learn quite a bit of stuff on your own to make this work without statics. You know, some people can do that, no problem. But dynamics, I would say, like I have no reservation telling people they can take dynamics without taking statics. Deform, it's a little more of a question, you know. Statics is very helpful for this class. And then co-requisite of differential equations, we're going to use very little calculus and no differential equations, I don't think. So those are just basically the same prerequisites that this class uses at the U. That's why I chose them. But if you need me to sign off on this, you know, I'd be happy to if your math isn't that far. The most concise summary I could give of this class is it's an introduction to stress and strain. We're going to talk about what stress and strain are. And the main benefits of stress and strain are they are the best predictors of whether an object is going to break, basically, or really more accurately, if you're going to have permanent deformation to a body. You know, if you're going to bend, like the steel bar can bend a little bit, and when you let go of it, pop back into place. But if you keep bending it, eventually you get a permanent deformation. And this is the way to determine whether permanent deformations are going to occur. The materials that are required, you need a good calculator that does vector and matrix math. You can check them out from the library. I probably have some I could, you know, scrape up to loan you if you don't have your own. If you're in the market for a new calculator, I would definitely recommend one that well, actually, this recommendation isn't as strong as it used to be. My preference would be one that does eigenvalues and eigenvectors. But now that everybody has a phone where you could just go to Wolfram Alpha and use that for eigenvalues and eigenvectors, it's not as critical as it used to be. You know, you can't use your phone on exams, and you can usually, in most classes, use your calculator on exams. I think most people here probably haven't had a lot of eigenvalues and eigenvectors yet, but I was saying in dynamics, we're right about at the point where you're going to hear about it for the first time, and just about every class from now on is going to use them. And it's pretty amazing all the different applications there are of eigenvalues and eigenvectors in totally unrelated seeming classes. You'll use them in circuits, you'll use them in deform, you can use them in dynamics, and on and on. Fluid mechanics, it's amazing. Things that don't seem to have anything to do with each other. And they're a pain to calculate by hand. So, and the other thing you need besides a good calculator is, so what calculators do eigenvalues and eigenvectors? TI-89 does, and that's the kind I have. So that's why that's written everywhere. And then the Inspire also does. And I don't know of any other TI calculators that do. Yep. In this class, you're allowed to use anything. And I don't know. Um, yeah, I don't remember the. Um, and then besides the calculator, you need a 3-ring binder. Because this class isn't based on a textbook, um, your notes and your homework solutions from this class are really going to be your main resource going forward. And so it's really important that all your notes are in one place, that they're complete, that they're legible, and that one place that everything's going to be is going to be this 3-ring binder. You're going to need 3 dividers for it, so you can separate this binder into class notes, and then assignments and solutions, and then exams and quizzes. You'll just have everything there. And instead of collecting homework assignments, I'm just going to collect these binders twice in the semester, make sure you're doing your notes legibly and completely, um, make sure that you're doing all the assignments and making them look nice and readable and make it easy to follow, and drawing your figures with an appropriate level of care. So I'll talk about that more when I talk about binders a little lower in here. The 2 recommended books, if you're looking for a resource, like I said, neither of these are going to discuss it very similarly to the way that I'm going to discuss it, um, but I mean, I could see these being useful still. Mechanics of Materials by Gear and Goodnow is the textbook they use at the U, and it's a perfectly good, complete textbook. It just doesn't do things using matrix math. And then the second one is Sham's Outline. Um, I love Sham's Outlines. They have them for every science class you'll take. They cost $15 or $20. They have a ton of problems with full solutions written out for some of them and answers written out for the other ones. So it's a great thing for, if you need to go back later and remind yourself how to do some problems. That's what it's really good for. But neither of these books, I would say, are going to be very helpful in this class. In this class, what you have to do is understand what I say, and when you get to stuff that you don't understand, you just have to talk to each other about it or talk to me about it. That's really, those are the resources. If you're trying to make sense out of stuff in this class by going to an outside resource, it's just going to make you more confused. Okay. All right. Any questions so far? Yes. Yes. Yep. Uh, the a PDF of my lecture notes will be posted and a video will be posted. Uh, so, yep. You can go back to any lecture anytime. Um, okay, let's go over the topics for now and go down to grading. Most likely, this is going to be the grading scale. If the grades are distributed too low, like we have too few A's, too few B's, that kind of thing, then I might relax these cutoffs a little bit. But usually, it's right around here. The A cutoff is 92, B's is 82, C's is 70, D's is 60, somewhere right around there. And a lot of times people, you know, just different professors have different sort of philosophies on how hard they want their tests to be, what they want their tests to be like. People a lot of times look at that grading scale and think it looks a little scary because you've probably taken some classes where the class average for exams is a 60 or something, but that's just not the way that I do exams. And so the scores are going to be, I mean, on every exam, there's going to be multiple perfect scores. Okay. just tend to do my exams uh, where the questions are quite similar to problems you've already solved in your assignments. And so if you're doing your work, everything will look like recognizable, familiar, um, and so the scores are biased higher in this class than in most classes, probably. Um, Philosophically, I like the idea of like, um, I mean, if I was hiring an engineer, what I would want more than anything else pretty much is for them to know what they know and know what they don't know, and the stuff that they know, I want them to know it all the way. And so that's sort of the way I try to like, yeah, I try to tell you what I need you to know, and I want you to know that stuff really well. And other stuff, I I'm not too interested in knowing what you know at a 60% level, if I'm hiring you to build a bridge, or whatever. Um, the grade will be broken down into 70% based on the exams, 15% based on binder evaluations, and 15% based on quizzes. And so now I'm just going to go through those three different categories and talk about them in a little more detail. Um, yes. Okay, so first the exams. There are 5 exams. They're all worth the same amount, except that exam 5 has a little extra power. So I'll talk about that. But 70% divided by 5 is 14% each, I think. So each exam is just worth 14% of your grade. Um, exam 5 is during our finals period. And if that score is higher than any of your first 4 exams, um, then that exam 5 score counts as itself. So it's that 14% of your grade. Plus, it replaces the lowest score of your first 4. So you could bomb one of the first 4 exams and then do better on the final, and that one that you bombed gets replaced. So I think of it as like a mulligan, like you can really screw it up once and it doesn't even have to show up in your grade. Um, that also is how I deal with missed exams. I mean, it's a different thing if you have a good excuse. We talk about it beforehand. Um, I'd be happy in cases where you're missing an exam for a good reason. Come talk to me beforehand. We'll schedule a makeup and no problem. But if you just don't show up for the exam, we didn't talk about it beforehand, say you miss exam 3, then the way it works is you get a 0 for exam 3, and now that's just your lowest score. And then when you take exam 5, say you get a 90 on exam 5, now that 90 counts for your exam 5 score, and it also replaces the 0. Okay. And then that's when the final is Monday of finals week at 2 p.m. It says, no makeup exams, but that's just me trying to sound like a tough guy. Uh, just come talk to me. Like, I stubbed my toe really badly yesterday. Okay, you can do a makeup. It's actually probably more like that. Um, just talk to me beforehand, basically. Um, and then the binder check. I did once, like in one of my first years here, somebody emailed me the morning of an exam and was like, I stayed up all night studying for this exam and now I'm too tired to come take it. Can I didn't give a makeup for that one. So there are limits. Um, okay, so the binders. Uh, there are 3 sections in your binders: notes, assignments and solutions, and exams. The class notes need to be complete and they need to be legible. Um, and if your notes are not very legible and you don't feel like recopying, and I think recopying your notes is a good idea for a lot of people, but you know, if you don't want to take the time to do that. I mean, feel free to just print out my notes and put them in there. All I care about is that you have good notes in your binder because you need that as for future reference. And if you miss a class, you know, just print out my notes from D2L and put them in the space where your notes would be. But it needs to be complete. The assignments and solutions. Every class, I'm going to assign some problems, and you'll do those problems and then just put them in the section. And I expect you to put some effort into making your assignments, your solutions, you know, look good, be easy to follow, be legible. And a big thing is the figures, which mostly we're talking about free body diagrams, need to look like they were done with care. And the things that to me are really important in a figure is you should be able to tell what lines are parallel, what lines are perpendicular, and what lines are neither of those. And this is still up from my class, a class earlier this morning. So this is sort of an example. Like I didn't sit here with a straight edge measuring stuff out, but with this you can tell that that's parallel to that, parallel to that. These two are parallel. These two are perpendicular, and this is neither parallel nor perpendicular to those. Okay, it didn't take me a lot of time, but I did put enough care in that you can tell that stuff. And this is, I see things like this pretty often. And I mean, even if I might have exaggerated, made it look unnecessarily ugly here, but you know, even if you didn't make it look so sloppy, you can't tell that information from that figure. Okay, so this is enough care, this isn't. And when I collect your binders, the clarity of the figures and the clarity of legibility and how easy it is for me to follow, that's going to all be part of how I evaluate this. And that's just because I think, you know, you're going to eventually be professionals working with other people, and you need to present your work in a understandable, professional way. But I should say it also has the side benefit of if you get in the habit of turning in nice looking, clear, legible work and good looking figures, it's going to every single class improve your grade compared to somebody who has the same understanding of the material and turns in sloppy looking stuff. So that's a benefit. And then the last section is exams and quizzes, actually. But so when I turn back your graded exams and graded quizzes, just punch holes in them and put them in the back of your binder so that you have it all right there whenever you need it. You'll turn the binder in 2 different times. And these are the dates. People who've taken classes with me before know I'm not real strict about those dates. I mean, if you want to turn it in a day or a couple days after, it doesn't matter to me at all. I just chose those dates because those are days where you have a reasonable amount of time before the next quiz or exam, so you can go without your binder for a class period or whatever. And I'll just go as fast as I can to get them graded, get them back to you, and then you have it to get ready for the next thing. The binder evaluations in total are worth 15% of your grade. There's 2 evaluations, each worth 7.5% of your grade. And then the last section that your grade depends on are quizzes. There are 6 quizzes scheduled. These are the dates. Those are just like 15-minute things at the end of class. The exams are all going to be problem solving. They're going to be similar to the problems that I assign. The quizzes are different. The quizzes are short answer questions about things that I said in class. So the way to get ready for the quizzes is just to read and reread your notes, okay, and pay special attention to the things where I say notice, star, notice, or things where in class I try to draw your attention to it. These are going to focus on the big ideas, but it's just to make you go back uh, and review your notes. Um, and the lowest quiz score gets dropped. So you'll take 6 quizzes. Your total quiz score is going to be based on the highest 5 scores. And since it's a total of 15% of your grade, 5 quizzes, each one is worth 3% of your grade. So individual ones aren't worth a ton, but they add up to a big chunk. And one thing that I want to, okay, cheating, don't copy the test of the person next to you. That's really the only way that can come up in this class. I don't usually have problems with that in engineering. Contribution to learning atmosphere. So I want this class to have sort of a light atmosphere. I like that, and you like that, and I feel like it's comfortable for everybody. But and so I don't want to act like you have to watch what you're saying all the time or whatever. But I have occasionally had problems where a student, very few times, where a student just regularly, repeatedly kind of hijacks the flow of the class by you've seen it. Yeah, I want to avoid that. And so if that kind of stuff becomes a big problem, it'll affect your grade in the class. And so just be aware that so like a joke here or there, like that's great. I love that, but if it's really like affecting the amount of time that we get to spend learning important engineering stuff, then that's a problem. And it's not just going to be a problem here. It's going to be a problem through your whole life. So get it straightened out now. Right. Anybody have any questions about any of this? Okay. Well, what I would like to do now, it's the same thing I did for dynamics this morning. I would like you to each take out a sheet of paper and answer 3 questions for me. Okay, so first, tell me what your intended engineering major is. And if you're still not decided between a couple of them, let me know what you're deciding between. And if you have an idea of where you're planning to transfer or a handful of places that are options for transferring, tell me what your transfer institution is. That's just sort of for my interest. Second, And maybe some of you don't know anything about this, and that's fine, you know. Um, Really, I'm just asking you this to start you thinking about it. If your grandma asked you what this class was about, what's the summary you would give her? Give me a short summary of what deform is about. Oh, by the way, not very many places call this deform. Most places call this mechanics of materials. That's the same thing. Um, we call it deform here because that's what they call it at the U, and that's where most of our students transfer. But you should just know, you know, when you see mechanics of materials, that's this class. And then the last thing is if you can, uh, so think of a list of engineering uh, areas where the subject we're going to learn about would be useful. And again, if you don't have any idea about this, just put a question mark there, and you know that's what we're going to do from now on in this class is tell you fill in those question marks. You know, um, so just give a list of engineering applications for deform, and put your name on it too, just so I can start to put names together with majors and transfer spots and stuff. I can find you later. And would you just hand these to me when class is over and on your way out the door? And then I want to do one more thing today, and then we'll call it a day. Um, so deform is part of mechanics. And I want to give a little illustration of where deform fits into the whole uh, set of mechanics classes. So mechanics, let's say it starts with physics 1. And from physics 1, most people go to statics. And from statics, it sort of branches out into two different worlds um, of mechanics. One of those is deform. Bless you. That's us. And the other one is dynamics. Um, deform is kind of the start of asking the question, will it break? And dynamics is asking the question, how will it move? Um, and after you're done with deform, um, you'll go into, I mean, it could be called a few different things, but I'm going to call it continuum mechanics. And from continuum mechanics, and really continuum mechanics is just a more mathematical, more advanced version. It's sort of like advanced deform. You think about some other cases, you don't make as many simplifying assumptions. And then from here, you can go two directions. You can go to advanced continuum mechanics, which is what my graduate department was kind of about. Very complicated math, very complicated. Um, but this is not like companies don't tend to have somebody who does advanced continuum mechanics working in the company to figure out like uh, in a collision what's going to happen to the fender of a car or something. You don't tend to have people doing super complicated, pencil and paper calculations. They tend to have people using big computer packages to do these calculations, which still takes a lot of understanding of this kind of stuff. But that's the other direction, and it's called finite element analysis. And so this is computer analysis, and this is like a mathematical analysis. On the other side of things, after you take dynamics, you can kind of go two directions. One is intermediate solid dynamics. And the other one is fluid dynamics. And this one, this is the dynamics class that half of the people here are taking. This, whoops, is a Newtonian approach. That has to do with forces. Intermediate solid dynamics tends to be what's called a Lagrangian approach. And that has to do with energy. And then fluid, I won't go off on fluid dynamics, but from there you can go to computational fluid dynamics where you're using computer simulations and hand calculations where the math gets really complicated. Like, that's sort of a layout of how all this fits together. We're here, if you're a mechanical engineering student, after this, you'll probably, well, if you do any more over here, you'll do sort of like a basic finite element analysis, most mechanical engineering students. And in dynamics, you'll do this. And then the most important direction is over to fluid dynamics because that relates to heat transfer and all these things in engines. If you're in civil engineering, most people in civil engineering, not everybody, but most will do deform. And then this side of the things is the more important side. And you'll do these and then maybe finite element analysis and stuff like that. Aerospace engineering really can be in any one of these areas. I was in aerospace engineering technically, and I was over here on this side mostly, but you can imagine solid dynamics are important for figuring out the orientations of satellites or whatever. Fluid dynamics is important because that has to do with, what's that called? Aerodynamics. So, anybody have any questions about the layout of mechanics in front of you? Yes? That's a good question. In this class, in deform, we are going to usually be assuming, I'll get this in your notes later, but yeah, there's a set of assumptions that we're going to basically make through the whole class. And one is that materials are isotropic, which means that it has sort of the same strength in any direction. So if you just make a steel object or whatever, the the molecules are arranged in random orientations. And so it's no stronger this way than it is this way, you know. But when people make like bike frames out of carbon fiber, they're controlling the behavior of the material by having the fibers oriented certain ways. And that means that if you uh, if you apply forces to it this way, it's stronger than if you apply forces to it this way. So that would not be isotropic. So the analysis we're doing would not work for high-tech carbon bike frames, or probably it doesn't work very well for bone, animal bone, you know, which is an important consideration because a lot of these ideas are used in biomechanics, you know. But bones tend to be, they resist compression really well along the long axis, but they're not good at resisting compression like something your leg like this, you know. And so bone is not isotropic. Wood, really anything with a grain tends not to be isotropic because it has a different strength along the grain than it does against the grain. And then so that's one aspect of the same everywhere, you know, is that direction thing. And the other thing is homogeneity. We're usually requiring that materials are homogeneous, which means that if you go over here, the behavior is the same as over here. So isotropic means looking at this one point here, it's the same in every direction. Homogeneous means this location is the same as this location. And we're going to assume both of those two things and a couple of other big assumptions too. Any other questions? Okay, so look on D2L, I'll give you an assignment. And I think I mentioned this in dynamics, but for the people who are taking dynamics 2 or statics 2, the first assignment is going to be the same in all 3 of those classes. You only have to do it once, so you don't have to put it in both binders. All right, that's it. Oh, give me your sheets of paper when you come by.